Hi, I'm Chris Mason and I specialise in treating anxiety and OCD. Here are 10 new perspectives on OCD that you likely don't know that were made evident in my own recovery. This may be life-changing information. OCD can be caused by a combination of any of these, so it's best to learn them all so you know what you're dealing with. So first we need to ask, is OCD the problem or is it the symptom? Well, of course, at some level OCD is a problem, but it is not the problem. If you're trying to just stop the OCD, then you're attending to the symptoms. It's like mopping up the floor rather than fixing the leaking pipe. The real problem is the underlying exhaustion and anxiety. As crazy as it sounds, you have to make yourself anxious in order to get rid of OCD. I have explained in another video how anxiety steps in when we emotionally and mentally exhausted to sabotage our lives, so we withdraw from life and replenish our emotional energy. Well, OCD is the condition that arises in certain personality types when anxiety alone wasn't enough to get your attention and make you realise that you're exhausted. The subconscious mind brings in the big guns in the form of OCD to trap you at home through obsessions and compulsions. Or if you do manage to leave the house, it will quickly scare you into returning home with sneaky tactics like making you question if the doors are locked or if the hob was on, or by making you fear contamination so you avoid others. OCD has so many options to trap you at home, and it knows exactly how to push your buttons. OCD always uses the same patterns, but it uses different themes to achieve the same result. This leads on to the next point. OCD can be seen as an addiction. It is an addiction to not feeling anxious. The reason why you complete compulsions is because if you don't, you will feel anxious, and people with OCD don't like feeling their emotions. With some people, they also have an additional story that if they don't do these compulsions, then something bad will happen to them or their loved ones. But the mind doesn't know what will happen in the future. It is just guessing based on how we were programmed as a child. If you don't complete these compulsions, the world won't end. You will just feel anxious. The reason you think that bad things will happen and run all of these catastrophe stories in your mind is because that is how you were taught to see the world when you were a child. From the day we are born, we are programmed by society through hundreds of different sources. But probably the biggest contributor to our programming is our parents. If you have a fearful way of looking at the world, it is likely that one or both of your parents thought and behaved in similar ways, and you copied their actions and beliefs. It isn't their fault, they were just behaving how they were programmed as well. Our minds are much like computers, the brain being the hardware and our beliefs being the software. Up until the age of 7, our brains just absorb information without question, and then that becomes our subconscious operating system. This then runs in the background throughout our lives, unless we take the time to reprogram it, of course. The Greek philosopher Aristotle was quoted as saying, "Give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man." Along with the programming we receive throughout our childhood, we almost invariably experience some form of trauma. It appears it's almost impossible to reach adulthood without this happening to some degree, be that the death of a loved one or pet, mental, physical or sexual abuse, being bullied, being ill, spending time in hospital, being left alone a lot, moving schools, or a host of other traumatic experiences. Often people with OCD have very painful traumas in their past, which they have stayed with them and impacted them deeply. Because these events were so painful, the subconscious mind can use OCD as a distraction from those traumas. It is like it's saying, that event was so terrible that I don't want you to ever have to think about it again. So the subconscious mind thinks that it is helping you by distracting you with all these obsessions and compulsions, ensuring that you are focused on them rather than revisiting the pain of the trauma you experienced. So the answer is to heal the wounded inner child. When it comes to intrusive thoughts about harming others or assaulting people or whatever story your mind is telling you, realize that these thoughts are not you. They're not who you are. OCD scares you with the opposite of who you really are. Because you're having these thoughts, it means that you're a good person and would very likely never do those things. OCD knows how to get your attention. You need to stop believing those thoughts and prove them wrong by going to these places or by interacting with these people or whatever it may be. Then this will recalibrate your mind into knowing that you wouldn't do those things. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night having a panic attack? Felt scared whilst watching a horror film? Well, the reason for this is the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a thought, a dream, or reality. You may watch a horror film and consciously know that they are just actors on the screen and it isn't real, but your subconscious mind doesn't. It thinks that what is happening is really happening right in front of you. This is the reason why those intrusive thoughts provoke so much anxiety and make you question if they're real. So it's sensible to be careful about what you consciously think about and what media you choose to absorb. If you choose to think happy thoughts and watch pleasant things, they will make the subconscious feel good emotions. OCD will try and sabotage you by making you doubt everything. OCD was once called the doubting disease. You wonder if you would harm that person, you wonder if you're ill, you wonder if you're going crazy, and then you doubt all the reassurance that you receive. Or it makes you feel better for a few minutes, and then you start worrying again. You need to learn to doubt your doubt, but more importantly, you need to learn to trust. Trust yourself, trust the people around you, and trust life more. Trust is the opposite and the antidote to doubt. If you can reprogram the mind to be more trusting, it will back off with all the doubtful stories as it believes everything is going to be okay. People with OCD tend to be very controlling, but this is a strange contradiction where they are very controlling and dominant, but at the same time feel like a victim. They're trying to control everything in their life that they feel completely out of control of. They control the people around them so they don't become triggered. You may not think that you're controlling, but ask the people around you what they think. And in particular, compulsions are an attempt to have some sense of control over things that are out of their control. It is important to let go of control and take in a more trusting and accepting attitude to life. If you're open to spiritual perspectives, perhaps there is a plan for your life, and by just letting go of control and taking action, you can move towards it. Just because your subconscious thinks you need to stay home doesn't mean it's correct. OCD can be a distraction, and when the sufferer decides to finally let go of OCD, there is often a big realization that so much of their life needs to change. They may need to get a job, find a relationship or friends, end an abusive relationship, or change where they live. This can be a very scary prospect. But what is scarier? Growing as a person and taking on the challenges of life, or continuing to live with OCD? This is where an attitude of "I'm not going to be a victim to this anymore" has to be adopted. I hope these new perspectives have helped you to understand OCD.